Hello viewers, welcome to CC Online Lectures. Myself Dr. Aditya P. Tripathi, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, Shamlal College Evening, University of Delhi. The topic of my today's lecture is control issues. I'll be telling you about the concept of control issue, what exactly it is, and the way we are applying this control issue into our decision making process. Because being a management accountant, we have to apply these things into our decision making process. Before I move on to the topic of control issues, let me tell you about the limitations of standard costing. There are certain limitations which come to us, on account of this variance analysis. As a management accountant, we have to always keep in mind that what are those limitations, so that we can overcome, we can ensure that these shortcomings should not affect our decision making process. What are those limitations? So that is something which I'm going to tell you. Let us start with the first limitation. What is the first limitation of variance analysis? The first limitation is that the standard which is being set by the cost accountant. Remember, suppose if I'm today setting the standard for say material, labor or overheads, might be possible that tomorrow when you are going to apply these standards into your production process, they may become redundant due to either change in the price of the material or the rate of the labor, or there might be a possibility of different types of changes owing to this material, labor or overheads. So remember, these standards these standards cannot be taken as a complete, or you can say foolproof idea of decision making process, or you can say controlling the cost, because they are dynamic in nature. But in any case, they are going to play as a guiding, they are going to play as a play the role of a guide for the management accountant. It can actually guide them that roughly this can be the standard cost, and you can find out the variances, that what are the variances and what are the different possible causes of or reasons of these variances. So we cannot, in any case, we cannot undermine the importance of variance analysis. We cannot question the importance or relevance of standard costing, but we have to keep this thing in mind, that what are the limitations of this variance analysis, so that whatever decision we are going to make or take out of on the basis of this particular tool of management accountant, it should not go haywire. It should not go in vain. So we have to keep this thing in mind, that what is the limitation of this variance analysis. After understanding this first very limitation, that whatever standard you have set, it may become redundant. The second possible limitation can be, you have to understand that whatever standards, the way standards are implemented, might be possible that you are having a standard for your particular material, labor or overheads, but the way it is implemented is not proper, is not as per the prescribed norms. So we have to understand the way it is being implemented. So the person, the management accountant who is going to rely on these values, say since the material, the information related to material, labor or overheads, they are provided by the costing department, we have to rely on the information provided by these departments only. So we have to understand that we have to ensure that whatever information we are getting from the costing department, they are right in all manners or not. If they are not correct, then obviously whatever decision we are going to take on the basis of this is not going to be helpful for us. But regardless of all these limitations, if you basically try to understand what the basis or genesis of these limitations, there is only one limitation. Frankly speaking, if you ask me, I will say there is only one limitation, and that limitation is the timing of setting standard. Because standard is being set today and it is implemented for long run, so we have to understand that might be possible that whatever standard I have set today, tomorrow it may become redundant, or you can say the values may change. So we have to always keep this thing in mind while relying on the variance, relying on the value of variance which we have computed, whether it is favorable, adverse or neutral. So if I'm going to implement it, I have to keep this thing in mind, that what was the standard which was set, whether that standard is holding true as on date, that is today, or not. So that is the responsibility of management accountant while implementing, while taking corrective steps on the basis of variance analysis. But despite all these limitations, still standard costing or variance analysis, it remains one of the most important and powerful tools in the hands of management accountant. Now I'll be talking about the next topic of our discussion, that is the today's topic, that is control issue. What is control ratio? The term itself is indicating that this ratio is going to be used for some kind of control. What is that control? That control is basically operational control. Since we are talking about costing, then obviously we have to take care of the cost control. We are going to use these control ratios for exercising, or you can say controlling the cost of a particular product, whatever we are producing. So let us first discuss what is control ratio. What exactly we mean by control ratio. We have to understand that in addition to variances, certain control ratios are commonly used for operational control. And these ratios are basically or generally expressed in terms of percentage. Whenever we find these kind of ratios, they are expressed in terms of percentage. And if the ratio is, when we have to apply this ratio for decision making process, if the ratio is greater than 100%, we regard it as favorable because the value which I am getting out of this ratio is more than 100%. But if it is less than 100%, it is regarded as unfavorable. Now the question comes, what if it is equal to 100%? It means you are basically going as per standard only. There is no benefit, there is no you can say there is no point of cost of control, there is no leverage out of it, there is no benefit out of this particular cost control. So it is supposed to be, if you want it to be favorable, it should be more than 100%. If it is exactly equal to 100%, it means you are not creating any benefit out of this exercise. And if it is less than 100%, obviously it is unfavorable because you are not ensuring the 100% control on your cost. So with this understanding of control ratio, what is control ratio? Control ratio is basically an operational tool in the hands of management accountant to exercise control of cost. Second is when we have to, how to interpret it, it is always expressed in terms of percentage. If it is more than 100, it is favorable. If it is less than 100, then obviously it is unfavorable. If it is equal to 100%, we stay neutral. It is neither favorable nor unfavorable. So let us talk about different types of control ratios. When we talk about control ratios, the first very ratio which comes to us is efficiency ratio. The second ratio is activity ratio. Third is capacity ratio. And the last one is known as calendar ratio. So whenever we talk about control ratio, there are four types of ratios. One is efficiency, second is activity, third is capacity, and fourth is calendar. Now I'll be telling you one by one, what do we mean by efficiency ratio, what do we mean by capacity ratio, what do we mean by calendar ratio, and so on. So let us start with the topic of efficiency ratio. What is efficiency ratio? Basically this ratio shows whether actual time taken in production is more or less than the time allowed by the standard. Which means that whatever time the standard has prescribed for this specific production process, whether we are taking more time than that or we are taking less time than the prescribed standard time, that is something which is being explained by this efficiency ratio. So it talks about the efficiency, how efficient we are into our operations. That is something which is expressed by this ratio called efficiency ratio. When we have to define it, it is defined as standard hours equivalent to the work produced, which is expressed as percentage of actual hours spent in production. So as far as its definition is concerned, it talks about standard hours which is equivalent to work produced, and it is expressed as percentage of actual hours spent in production. If I have to show it as formula, the formula for efficiency ratio is standard hours for actual output divided by actual hours worked into 100. Why are we multiplying it by 100? Because we want our answer in terms of percentage. So efficiency ratio is basically the ratio between the standard hours for actual output and actual hours worked. So it's a ratio of standard hours for actual output and actual hours for which we have worked. This is being expressed by this ratio called efficiency ratio. The second ratio which comes to us is known as activity ratio. When we have to define this ratio, activity ratio, it is basically showing the extent to which the production facilities have been utilized in relation to budgeted value. We have a budgeted value, and we have basically, along with the budgeted value, we have to find out the ratio which can tell us about how active we are, to what extent the production facilities have been utilized in relation to budgeted value. If we have utilized it properly, if we have utilized it in a proper manner, or you can say optimum manner, then obviously the ratio will be more than 100%. If it is not, then obviously less than 100%. If we have to define it, the activity ratio is defined as the standard hours equivalent to the work produced, which is expressed as again percentage of budgeted standard hours. So we have to understand, we have to always keep this thing in mind, that this activity ratio is basically the expression of standard hours equivalent to the work produced, and it is expressed as percentage of budgeted standard hours. If I have to show it as in a formula, the formula is like activity ratio is equal to standard hours for actual output divided by budgeted hours into 100. So standard hours for actual output is my numerator, my denominator is budgeted hours, and since I have to calculate the ratio in terms of percentage, then obviously it is going to be expressed in terms of percentage, so I am multiplying it by 100. So activity ratio is basically telling me the standard hours for actual output in relation to budgeted hours. So to what extent I have honored this budgeted hour, the concept of budgeted hour, the hours which are decided or prescribed for this actual production. Now after activity ratio, the third ratio which comes to us on account of control ratio is capacity ratio. The term itself is indicating we are going to talk about capacity utilization. It shows the relationship between the actual hours worked and budgeted hours. That what is the relationship between the actual hours and budgeted hours for which we have worked. If I have to show it as a in a formula, the formula is like actual hours worked divided by budgeted hours into 100. So it is basically the ratio between the actual hours worked and budgeted hours, and since we want our answer in terms of percentage, that is why we multiply it by 100. Next ratio which is there in the kitty of control ratios is the calendar ratio, and this is going to be the last ratio of our control ratios in the list of control ratios. The term itself is indicating about the calendar, which means we are talking about some dates. Like suppose in every specific given factory setup, we have some working days, some standard working hours. It may be weekly, it may be monthly, it may be annual also, it may be quarterly also, it may be half yearly also. So depending on the type of calendar you have, suppose if you are having a monthly calendar, in a month, suppose you feel that there are 4 Sundays, so the budgeted days should be 26. But there might be a possibility that due to some public holidays, you are not working for all 26 days, you are either working for 24 days or 23 days due to holidays, or there might be a possibility that on some Sundays due to excessive work pressure, your foreman or supervisor have called you for working, so your actual days of working may be greater than the calendar days, that is budgeted days. So calendar ratio is basically talking about the number of days which are being allotted for the production process, right? So it indicates the extent of actual working days availed during the budgeted period. So in budgeted period, we have some budgeted days, so we have to basically compare those budgeted days with the budgeted days of working with that of actual days of working. If I'm working for the greater period in relation to the budgeted period, then obviously it is favorable for me. Otherwise, it is going to be unfavorable or adverse for me, because I have to control the cost, and to control the cost, I need to utilize the resources in an optimum manner, and for that only we are computing calendar ratios. So for calendar ratio, the formula is very simple: actual working day in the budget period divided by budgeted working days in the budget period. So as I told you at the very outset, it is a ratio between the actual working days and budgeted working days. So whatever this period for which you are calculating the control ratio, for that you have to find out what is my actual working day, and then you have to compare it with that of your budgeted working days. And since we want our answer in terms of percentage, simply multiply it with the 100 so that we can get the answer in terms of percentage. Now I hope you must have understood the formula for different types of control ratios. We talked about the calendar ratio, we talked about the capacity ratio, we talked about the efficiency ratio. So now it's time for us to apply these formula into a numerical problem so that we can understand the way it is being implemented in a business setup. So let us start with a numerical problem. There is a company named LK Limited, and it is manufacturing 2 products, and they are named as A and B. As per standards, 2 units of A and 8 units of B can be produced in 1 hour. This is the information given to you, that as per standards, 2 units of A and 8 units of B can be produced in 1 hour. So if you are working for 1 hour, you can produce 2 units of A and 8 units of B. Budgeted production for the month given is, for A it is 400 units and for B it is 1600 units, that is 1600 units. This is the budgeted production given in the practical problem or in the question. Actual production which is reported here during the month is 600 units of A and 2000 units of B. This is the actual production reported in the question. That actual production during the month is 600 units for A and 2000 units for B. Actual hours spent in production is 480 and factory as reported in the question is worked for 26 days during the month, whereas the specified working days in the budget were 25 days only. So we worked for 26 days, whereas the budgeted period was 25 days only, and we are asked to calculate activity ratio, capacity ratio, efficiency ratio and calendar ratio. And further the question is asking us to justify the possible reasons for favorable or adverse activity ratio. That what can be the possible reason for this favorable or adverse activity ratio. It is quite simple to calculate. So let us calculate these different types of control ratios, and then I'll be telling you how to justify the possible reasons for either the favorable or the adverse activity ratio. So let us start with the first basic information. We have to first find out that how many hours we need for this product A and B specifically. So for A, 400 units if we have to manufacture, and question is reporting that 2 hours you are going to take to manufacture it. So I'll be needing 200 hours for product A if I go for producing as per the budgeted information or budgeted values. For B, since I have to manufacture 1600 units and I'm going to take 8 hours to manufacture 1 unit of this specific product, then obviously 200 hours I'm going to take up. 1600 units divided by 8 hours is equal to 200 hours. So 200 hours I'll be taking. So this is the total hours which I need for A and B collectively. If I club them together, it is 400 hours. So this is what? This is my budgeted hours for the month. So 400 units I have to manufacture for A and 1600 for B, and 2 hours I'm taking to manufacture one, and 8 hours I'm taking for this particular B. So 1600 divided by 8 hours, that is 200 hours I'll be needing, and here I'll be needing 400 by 2, 200 hours. So total hours required is 400 hours. Now I'll be calculating the actual hours, the actual hours, the standard hours for actual production. Actual production as reported in the question is 600 units and 2000 units for A and B. So for A, 600 units I have to manufacture. Since I'm taking 2 hours for one, so 300 hours I'll be taking. 600 divided by 2 is equal to 300 hours. And for B, 2000 units divided by 8 hours is equal to 250 hours. So if I club them, I get the total hours, that is 550 hours. So in this way, what I have done, I have calculated the standard hours for my actual production. The standard hours for standard production were given in the question, but we have to find out what is the standard hour for actual production, and this is what I have calculated here. 600 divided by 2 per hour, 2 hours, that is 300 hours, and for 2000 I need how many hours? I need 250 hours, right? So total hours which is required here is 550 hours. Now I can, after having this basic computation, we'll be moving on to calculate different types of control ratios. Let us start with the activity ratio. For activity ratio, the formula, as I told you, standard hours for actual output divided by budgeted hours into 100. Standard hours we have calculated 550 hours. This is for actual output, and budgeted hours were 400 hours. And I have to multiply it with the 100 to arrive at the activity ratio. That what is my ratio? 550 hours is the standard hour for actual output, and budgeted hour is 400 hours into 100. What value do I get? I get a value of 137.50%. So if you ask me whether it is favorable or not, I would say it is favorable because it is more than 100%. So 550 hours was the standard hours for actual output, whereas the budgeted hour was 400 hours. So the ratio is 137.50%. So this tells us about the activity ratio. The next ratio in the process is capacity ratio. What is the formula for capacity ratio? Actual hours worked divided by budgeted hours into 100. Actual hours reported in the question, which we have just calculated, 480 hours, and budgeted hours we have calculated that also, that is 400 hours. So 480 hours divided by 400 hours into 100. So we worked for the greater hour, that is 480 hours, whereas the prescribed hours were 400. So there is no shortage. The percentage comes to be 120%. So as far as the capacity utilization is concerned, the capacity ratio is telling us the ratio is favorable for us. It is 120%, that is 120%. After computing this capacity ratio, the next in line is efficiency ratio. For efficiency ratio, since we know the formula, standard hours for actual production divided by actual hours into 100. Standard hours for actual production is given 550 hours, and 480 hours is the actual hour which is given here into 100. So efficiency ratio comes to be 114.58. Standard hours for actual production we have just computed at the very outset. We aggregated for A and B both, and we found 550 hours and divided it by 480 hours to arrive at our efficiency ratio, and that came to be 114.58%. After computing efficiency ratio, the next in line is calendar ratio. It is very simple to calculate. Actual days of working divided by budgeted days of working into 100. Actual days of working is 26. The budgeted days were 25 days. Into 100, we found the calendar ratio to be 104%, 104%. Now in this way, once we have calculated activity, capacity, efficiency and calendar ratios, we have computed all the control ratios. How to interpret it? If the answer is more than 100, if the values are more than 100, then it is favorable. Otherwise, it is adverse. And fortunately, here in this numerical problem, all the values are in our favor because they are more than 100%. So it is very easy for us to interpret. Control ratios are very easy to understand, easy to calculate, and very easily you can interpret from these ratios what you have calculated. If they are more than 100, then they are good, they are favorable for us. If they are less than 100, then they are not favorable for us. Now it's time for us to go for the second part of the question. The second part of the question is asking for justification. Now we have to justify the activity ratio, that what are the possible ratios, what are the possible reasons for either being these ratios into our favor or being being adverse for us. So it is very simple for us to justify here. Activity ratio is known as a representation of or multiplication of capacity ratio and efficiency ratio. So whatever activity ratio we have calculated, we have to justify them by multiplying capacity and efficiency ratio. Here in this question, activity ratio we have calculated 137.50%, capacity ratio was 120%, and efficiency ratio was 114.58. Once we solve it, the activity ratio comes to be 1.375, and that is equal to 1.20 into 1.1458. And when you multiply them, you get the value exactly equal to the activity ratio, that is 1.375, or you can say 137.50%. So in this way, we can conclude that activity ratio is the function of multiplication of capacity ratio and efficiency ratio. What are the responsible ratios for it? For the responsible ratios for it are capacity and efficiency ratio. So it is your capacity and efficiency, when they are multiplied together, they tell about the activity of your business organization, activity of your costing, that is your operational control. So in this way, my dear students, in addition to standard costing, that is called variance analysis, what you were actually understanding by the way of standard costing, because when I say standard costing, people think that it is basically the variance analysis. In fact, in standard costing, we are conducting the variance analysis. We are finding the variance and doing the analysis. So that is the practical part of standard costing. So in addition to variance analysis, what you call practically, and we as faculty members, we assume that we say that it is standard costing, because variance analysis in any case you are going to do once you are applying standard costing. So in addition to standard costing, in fact, these control ratios, at times they are very much useful for the management accountant to take certain or make certain decisions. So If you wish to calculate these ratios without computing different types of variances, you can calculate these control ratios in exercise control. Although I'm not saying that they are going to act as a substitute of your variance analysis. No, obviously not. They can act as a supplement to that. In addition to variance analysis, you can make use of these control ratios as well. You can calculate capacity, efficiency, and activity ratios, and along with that you can also calculate calendar ratios. So in this way, my dear students, I tried to make you understand how to calculate control ratios and the way we have to draw inferences out of the value which we have got out of this calculation of control ratios. In this way, we have understood the topic of control ratio, standard costing, that is variance analysis. We started our today's lecture with the limitation of standard costing, and then I told you about these control ratios. I hope you must have understood and enjoyed today's lecture of mine. Thank you so much.